In the bustling hallways of Northwood High, where laughter echoed and confidence seemed to be the universal currency, a young student named Maya often felt like an outsider looking in. She was a brilliant mind, her notebooks filled with insightful essays and complex equations, yet the thought of sharing those ideas aloud would send a shiver down her spine. Her voice, so clear and articulate in her own head, would shrink to a barely audible whisper whenever she was called upon in class. The fear of public speaking was a heavy cloak she wore daily, one that made her feel invisible despite her yearning to be heard. It wasn't just a simple case of nerves. It was a paralyzing dread that held her captive, preventing her from participating in class discussions, joining debate clubs, or even raising her hand to ask a question. She would watch her peers present their projects with an ease she could only dream of, their words flowing effortlessly while hers remained trapped behind a wall of anxiety. This silent struggle was her constant companion, a shadow that followed her from one classroom to the next. One crisp autumn morning, a flyer posted on the main bulletin board caught her eye. It announced the annual school-wide speech contest, its bold letters practically jumping off the page. The theme for the year was Finding Your Voice. Maya felt a strange pull, a mix of sheer terror and a flicker of something else, curiosity, perhaps even a sliver of hope. The irony was not lost on her. A contest about finding one's voice for someone who felt she had none. For days, the flyer haunted her thoughts. She imagined herself on that stage, the sea of faces staring back at her, the spotlight blinding her. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to retreat back into the comfortable silence she knew so well. Yet, a different, quieter voice deep within her whispered, "What if? What if she could face this fear, just once?" The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. After a week of internal debate, with a trembling hand and a heart pounding against her ribs, Maya signed her name on the entry form. It was a small act, a simple scrawl of ink on paper, but for her, it felt like a monumental leap into the unknown. The weeks leading up to the contest were a whirlwind of preparation and panic. Maya spent countless hours in the quiet solitude of the school library, researching, writing, and rewriting her speech. She chose to speak about her own journey with shyness, framing it not as a weakness but as a unique perspective on the world. The words came easily when she was alone, her passion for the topic flowing onto the page. The real challenge, however, was practicing it aloud. She started by whispering the lines to herself, then gradually progressed to speaking to her reflection in the mirror. Each time she stumbled over a word or her voice cracked, a wave of self-doubt would wash over her. There were moments when she was tempted to quit, to tear up the speech and pretend it never happened. But then she would remember the feeling of signing that form, the small spark of courage she had felt, and she would push through. She practiced in empty classrooms after school, her voice echoing in the silent halls, slowly building a fragile bridge between her inner thoughts and the spoken word. The day of the contest arrived, and with it, a storm of anxiety. Backstage, Maya could hear the muffled applause for the speakers before her, each clap feeling like a countdown to her own turn. Her palms were sweaty, her knees felt weak, and the carefully memorized lines of her speech seemed to have vanished from her mind. When her name was called, she took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, her steps feeling unsteady. The bright lights were just as blinding as she had imagined, and the audience was a blur of indistinct faces. For a moment, the old fear gripped her, threatening to pull her back into silence. She stood at the podium, her heart hammering, her throat tight. Then she looked down at her notes, and the first line she had written stared back at her. Silence has a sound of its own. It was her truth. She looked up, found a friendly face in the crowd, and began to speak. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she delved into her story, a newfound strength emerged. She spoke of the quiet power of observation, of the courage it takes to listen, and finally, of the terrifying but liberating act of speaking up. Maya didn't win the first place trophy that night. Her name wasn't the one announced for the grand prize, and she didn't get the thunderous ovation reserved for the most polished speaker. But as she walked off the stage, a different, more profound sense of victory washed over her. The applause from the audience was genuine and warm, and for the first time, she had shared a piece of her true self with the world and had been heard. The heavy cloak of fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer felt so suffocating. She had faced her greatest dread, and had not only survived but had also discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. The contest taught her an invaluable lesson. Courage wasn't about the absence of fear. It was about feeling that fear, acknowledging its power, and choosing to stand up and speak anyway. In that moment, Maya realized she had found something far more valuable than a trophy. She had found her voice, and with it, the confidence to know that she would never be truly invisible again. She had made an impression, not just on the audience, but on herself.